All right, so we're going to take a look at archetypes. We've done a little bit of archetypal analysis with Invisible Man, but we're going to focus a lot more on it with this story, Young Goodman Brown, and also in subsequent stories that we read. An archetype is defined as a recurrent symbol or motif in literature, art, or mythology. And knowing and understanding these archetypes can help you with your understanding of the literature. Authors put these symbols in their literature in order to convey a message. So colors are one big way that authors try to convey a message. And as I say here on the handout, sometimes a blue curtain is just a blue curtain. But most of the time the color is the author's way of conveying meaning. So this is not an exhaustive list. If you come across a color and you think that it might have some archetypal meaning, then you can Google it, and most of the time you'll come up with a pretty good list of archetypes. But here are a few. So red can stand for love, virility, courage, anger, war, imperial power, love of God, sin, primitive wildness, and blood. So as you can see from these different words, context is definitely important. Virility, which is like manliness, doesn't have the same meaning as the love of God, so context definitely matters. Green can stand for fertility, life, growth, rebirth, immortality, spiritual integrity, youth, hope, spring, freshness, innocence, and inexperience. Black can stand for penitence, death, grief, mourning, ignorance, punishment, nothingness, evil, and sin. The color white can stand for peace, purity, faith, timelessness, ecstasy, the mood, and spiritual intuition. Yellow can stand for the sun, fruitfulness, beneficence, joy, truth, intuition, and intellect. Violet or purple can stand for royalty, noble birth, dignity, wisdom, power, and spirituality. Blue can stand for the sky, sanctification, sincerity, piety, intuition, truth, eternity, devotion, and heavenly truth. Gold sometimes stands for solar light, divine intelligence, virtue, superiority, pure light, heaven, worldly wealth, idolatry, the sun, the id, divinity, and the glory of God. Silver stands for purity, faith, chastity, eloquence, innocence, a clear conscience, virginity, fidelity, and the moon. Pink can sometimes stand for boldness, a woman's love, aversion, pure love, ingenuity, talent, or loss of innocence. Orange can stand for the Holy Spirit, pride, ambition, heat, lust, marriage, and hospitality. Brown can stand for the earth, penitence, grief, barrenness, poverty, depression, spiritual death, and degradation. So the colors, like I said, with all archetypes, context matters. You can't just look at the color pink and decide that it stands for aversion without kind of considering what's going on around it. So along with colors, authors will also use water or images in order to convey a deeper meaning in the text. One of the images is water, and water can stand for the mystery of creation, the birth, death, and resurrection, purification and redemption, fertility and growth. Specifically, the sea stands for the mother of all life, spiritual mystery and infinity, death and rebirth, timelessness and eternity, and the unconscious. Rivers stand for death and rebirth, the flowing of time into eternity, transition phases of the life cycle, and incarnations of deities. The sun, fire and sky are closely related, so something to know. The sun stands for creative energy, law in nature, consciousness, which is thinking, enlightenment, wisdom, and spiritual vision. The father principle. Moon and earth tend to be associated with a female or other principle, and the passage of time and life. The rising sun stands for birth, creation, and enlightenment, and the setting sun stands for death. Circles or spheres can stand for wholeness and unity. The egg can stand for the mystery of life and forces of generation. Yang and yin is the Chinese symbol representing the union of opposite forces of the yang, which stands for the masculine principle, light, activity, and conscious mind, and the yin, which stands for the female principle, darkness, passivity, and the unconscious. And Ouroboros, and I included an example here for you. An Ouroboros is the ancient symbol of the snake biting its own tail, and it signifies the eternal cycle of life, primordial unconsciousness, and the unity of opposing forces. The serpent is the symbol of energy and pure force, evil, corruption, sensuality, destruction, mystery, wisdom, and the unconscious. Gardens stand for paradise, innocence, unspoiled beauty, especially feminine, and fertility. Trees stand for the life of the cosmos, its consistent growth, proliferation, inexhaustible life, and immortality. And they also depict the cross of redemption as the tree of life in Christian iconography. And a desert, I should only have one S, stands for spiritual aridity, death, nihilism, and hopelessness. So those are nature symbols. Numbers, the number 3 can stand for light, spiritual awareness, and unity, as in the Holy Trinity, and the male principle. 4 is associated with the circle, the life cycle, the 4 seasons, the female principle, earth and nature, and the 4 elements, earth, wind, and fire. The number 7 is the most potent of all symbolic numbers. It signifies the union of 3 and 4, the completion of a cycle in perfect order. When we see women in literature, they're usually classified in 3 different ways. There's the good mother. She is associated with the life principle, birth, warmth, nourishment, protection, fertility, growth, and abundance. The terrible mother is the witch, sorceress, siren, whore, femme fatale, associated with sensuality, sexual orgies, fear, danger, darkness, dismemberment, emasculation, and death. It's the unconscious in its terrifying aspect. The soulmate, or the Sophia figure, the Holy Mother, the Princess or Beautiful Lady, incarnation of inspiration and spiritual fulfillment. So a lot of times you can see these archetypes in literature, archetypes of female characters. Some motifs or patterns. Creation is perhaps the most fundamental of all archetypal motifs. Virtually every mythology is built on some account of how the cosmos, nature, and humankind were brought into existence by some huge supernatural being or beings. There's also flood myths. The flood myths or deluge myths are taken collectively, myths of a great flood. In Christianity, we have Noah and the Ark. These accounts depict global flooding, usually sent by a deity or deities to destroy civilization, as an act of divine retribution. Flood stories are common across a wide range of cultures, extending back into prehistory. It symbolizes punishment as opposed to complete destruction. Immortality is another fundamental archetype, generally taking one of the 2 basic forms. You have escape from time, like return to paradise, the state of perfect timeless bliss, enjoyed by man and woman before their tragic fall into corruption and mortality. Then there's also the mystical submersion into cyclical time, the theme of endless death and regeneration. Human beings achieve a kind of immortality by submitting to the vast, mysterious rhythm of nature's eternal cycle, cycle, particularly the cycle of the seasons. And you guys studied Heroes. Some of you have studied Hero's Journey before. We have the hero archetypes. There are always certain parts to Hero's Journeys. There's the quest, where the hero undertakes a long journey during which he or she must perform impossible tasks, battle with monsters, solve unanswerable riddles, and overcome insurmountable obstacles in order to save the kingdom. During initiation, the hero undergoes a series of excruciating ordeals in passing from ignorance and immaturity to social and spiritual adulthood. That is, in achieving maturity and becoming a full-fledged member of his or her social group. The initiation must commonly consist of 3 distinct phases: separation, transformation, and return. Like the quest, this is a variation on the death and rebirth archetype. And then we have the sacrificial scapegoat. The hero, with whom the welfare of the tribe or nation is identified, must die to atone for the people's sins and restore the land to fruitfulness. So this list of archetypes, like I said, is not exhaustive, but it's a pretty good start. And so while we're doing archetypal criticism, we look for these signs, we look for these symbols in literature and try to figure out what the author is telling us, like the deeper meaning of the story and what the author is trying to tell us using these symbols. So keep this handout handy as you're reading, and it will help you discern those meanings.